Hello and welcome back to our 10th lesson, Food and Agriculture, and we will explain how we can feed the large population that we have today. So we're going to start off by talking about food and nutrition. The human body is a machine, and like all machines, it needs maintenance. So for instance, if you look at a car needs air and gasoline in large amounts to run. That's kind of like how we need air in large amounts and other primary fuel like carbohydrates, fats, and proteins in large amounts. But cars also need things like motor oil and transmission fluid and brake fluid. Those are sort of like vitamins and minerals. So we're going to talk about them. And in general, good nutrition is when we allow our bodies, when we take in what our bodies need. The human body is about two-thirds water, more or less, in large concentrations of oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, and nitrogen, and trace amounts of other elements. So look at the human body. This is what makes up the human body. So we're quite a bit of large percent of oxygen. Why is that? Well, because we're mostly water, and water H2O, and water is large amount of of hydrogen, and we have trace amounts of the other uh, primary four uh, uh, elements. As we consume food, it becomes digested. So what does that mean? Starches and sugars get broken down into glucose, what our cells can use. Proteins get broken down into amino acids, the building blocks. Fats are further broken down. And also our liver, our organ, the liver, can change food into more usable forms, like provitamins into vitamins, for instance. And energy in food, so calorie, when you see a calorie, it's actually a kilocalorie. A lowercase calorie is the amount of energy required that will raise 1 gram of water 1 degree Celsius. But a nutritional calorie is the amount of energy that will raise a kilogram of water 1 degree Celsius. And a person's own individualized caloric intake will depend on that person's size, weight, and activity. And what is not digested? Not everything we eat is digested. That's mostly fiber or cellulose, that what makes up a lot of cell walls. So carbohydrates, talking about carbs, there are simple sugars. These are the monosaccharides like glucose and fructose, and some disaccharides like sucrose and lactose. And starch, this is a polymer of glucose. So remember talking about polymers, and these break down to glucose. And these are found in grains, rice, some fruits. So there's a little bit of starch in bananas, for instance. Tubers. What's a tuber? Potato and taro are both tubers. These types of things. There's where we find starches. And cellulose is also a polymer of glucose, but we cannot digest it. Some animals can. Some herbivores, like cows, can digest cellulose. We can't, but we still need it. What it does is it cleans out our GI tract, our gastrointestinal tract, and limits our chance of getting certain diseases. Let's talk about fats. As we learned before, fats are triglycerides, so our body breaks this down into glycerin and fatty acids. And fats, of the primary nutrients for us, these are high energy molecules, so we can get a lot of energy from fats. And in general, though, the polyunsaturated fats, these are healthier than the saturated fats and the trans fats. Saturated fats are found primarily from animal sources. Polyunsaturated fats and omega-3 fats are found primarily in vegetables and fish. There are some exceptions, though. For instance, coconut. Coconut is a plant, but it has almost entirely saturated fats to it. There are some essential fats that we need in our diet, otherwise we won't function properly. Cholesterol is also a fat, and we need this. We need cholesterol to make hormones, and we use it in our cell membranes. Also, bile. Bile is made in our liver and sent to our gallbladder, and it helps us digest fats. And thing with cholesterol is if we have too much, it can lead to cardiovascular disease. Where do we find a lot of cholesterol? Meat and shellfish. That's where we find high amounts of cholesterol. With cis and trans fats, we talked about before. What's trans fats? We talked about a little bit. All um, all naturally occurring fats are cis. For hydrogenated oils, hydrogenated oils can form trans fatty acids, and those are formed whenever you make margarine or some other sort of hydrogenated oil. So they make both cis and trans, but natural fats all have cis. Why are they harmful? Well, your body has to take the trans and turn it to cis, so it puts your body under stress, and it's not as beneficial. Animal fats tend to be much more saturated. Of course, there's exceptions to those rules. Proteins, there are 20 common amino acids as we learned in biochemistry, but our body cannot manufacture 8 of those 20. The other 12 we can manufacture, 8 we don't. So we need those 8. And that's the reason why humans are a little bit on the carnivorous side. We're omnivores. We can even survive just on vegetable and on non-animal sources for food. It's just difficult. And we're not really built to do it. So if you decide to become a vegetarian, be very careful and talk to some experts to make sure you're getting proper nutrition. Any meat, fish, dairy, and soybean is one of the plants. They have all 8 required amino acids. Most other foods are missing one of them, but maybe you've heard of complete protein. If you combine certain foods like beans and rice, that's a complete protein, or like grains and other legumes like peanut butter and bread, that will give you, and whole wheat bread, that will give you a complete protein. Deficiency diseases, so having less protein can lead to kwashiorkor. And this is maybe you've seen commercials of people and they have these kind of bloated, extended bellies. It's not because they are fat, it's because they have this disease. And what happens is there's not enough protein to make enzymes, and because of that, the body will start to prioritize the proteins for certain functions, and the people tend to be kind of lethargic. And over time, this can cause cell death and ultimately death of the patient. There's other types of metabolic malfunction diseases. Diabetes is one. This is from a lack of insulin. And insulin is a protein. This is something that needs to be injected into people. You can't eat insulin. You can eat it, yeah, well, you can eat it, but your body will digest it. And it'll just be a very expensive protein shake. So insulin needs to be digested. So both types of diabetes deal with the way that body metabolizes glucose. Galactosemia, also commonly known as lactose intolerance, the body does not have, the people here do not have the enzyme to convert galactose to glucose. And lactose is glucose and galactose disaccharide. And the symptoms from galactosemia come from the galactose doesn't get converted, so when it eventually gets into the lower GI tract, the natural flora down there, the bacteria see the sugar and then they thrive on it, and they cause all sorts of things like gas coming off, and causes the individual to be relatively uncomfortable with lactose intolerance. So vitamins and minerals, primary definition, vitamins are organic molecules. They used to think that vitamins were amines, that vital amine was where vitamin came from. Turns out they're not all amines. So vitamin is the new word. They're not vital amines, but they're organic molecules, meaning carbon containing. We need them in small amounts. Minerals, these are, other than carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen, the primary nutrients. These are the elements that we need for normal function. So let's talk about the different types of vitamins. Let me first talk about the fat-soluble vitamins. Fat-soluble vitamins, your body will store. Your body can store these, so these tend to be a little more dangerous. Well, it's harder to have deficiencies with these because your body has a store of them, but at the same time, if you have too much, your body can get too many of these. So vitamin A is retinol, and too much retinol can kill you very easily. It's fairly toxic in high doses. With the exception, provitamin A, beta-carotene, is not toxic at all. You can eat so much beta-carotene that your fat turns yellow and your skin turns orange, and it will not really affect you at all. Too much vitamin A, retinol by itself, though, that is very dangerous. And if you do not get enough vitamin A or provitamin A in your diet, the typical symptom is night blindness. Vitamin D, this this is fairly hard to overdose on. Your body can make this naturally as well by cholesterol and ultraviolet B radiation. You can generate vitamin D3, and your liver can transform into something else. And so, some of the idea is that in the climates where humans are, that it gets dark in the like in Alaska or in Siberia, uh, before modern exchange of trade, people could survive by storing their fat soluble vitamin D in their tissues and then using it during the winter time. Vitamin E, this is an antioxidant. Vitamin C is our primary antioxidant. So what does an antioxidant do? It's actually vitamin A is an antioxidant as well. How do you prevent a group of kids from eating a plate full of Brussels sprouts? Well, you give the kids a bunch of M&Ms, and the kids will eat all the M&Ms, and they'll be too full to eat the Brussels sprouts. So how do you keep very highly reactive molecules from attacking your cell membrane and or DNA or other sorts of organelles? Put vitamin C. The vitamin C will be much more attractive than the other ones, and the molecules will attack that. And that's why we need to have consistent supply of those. Vitamin E is very difficult to overdose in. Um, vitamin K, vitamin K deals with coagulation. So vitamin K allows your blood to coagulate or clot. For people with extreme lack of vitamin K, they get hemorrhage. They'll start bleeding out their eyes, ears, and nose, and or they'll have hemophilia or a form of hemophilia. That's when you bleed without your blood clotting. Too much vitamin K is also dangerous because it'll cause your blood to become too thick, and your heart will be trying to pump something like cake batter through your blood and can cause your blood pressure to drop and heart attack and these types of things. We can make vitamin K. We have a symbiotic relationship with certain bacteria, so we can make vitamin K in our colon. But sometimes when you take antibiotics, you can kill those bacteria. So if you ever diagnosed with something like tuberculosis, and you have to take long periods of times under antibiotics, talk to your doctor. He might prescribe you some vitamin K supplements so that you don't have this. Or if you end up taking the antibiotics for a long period of time, and then you find yourself bleeding easily, bruising easily, and maybe even bleeding out of your eyes, ears, or nose, it's from lack of vitamin K. If you want to deal with things naturally, spinach and other green leafy vegetables have quite a bit of vitamin K. Generally speaking, so the water-soluble ones, so fat-soluble mean your body stores it. Water-soluble, your body can't store it. Everything that you don't use, you pee right out. And B vitamins in general, they do different things. They in general help your body deal with energy. Vitamin C is a antioxidant. That's our primary antioxidant. Not having enough vitamin C leads to scurvy. But vitamin B that's the general talk about them. Be careful though. Even though they're water soluble, vitamin B's and C's can be dangerous in high quantities. So first of all, vitamin C is a fairly reactive molecule. It can destroy B vitamins if you take too much of it. That's one problem. Second problem, vitamin B, especially vitamin B6, if taken in megadoses over long periods of time, this can cause nerve damage. Oh, it's not can. This will cause nerve damage. So if you take certain sports drinks, certain products like 5-Hour Energy, if you take that every day, if you do that for a not long enough period of time, you will get nerve damage, and your arms and legs primarily. The symptoms will appear as a numbness or tingling at first. So if you have been using products that have megadoses of B vitamins, particularly B6, and you do that daily, and you find out after 3 to 6 months you get numbness and or tingling in your hands or feet or legs, you're getting nerve damage. Or it might be other things, but you might also be getting nerve damage. So be very careful if you do that. I recommend not using them more than maybe once or twice a week. So this is the intakes for vitamins that are recommended, and with this, the IU. So you can see IU stands for International Unit. It means absolutely nothing. There's just decided there's no rhyme or reason for an international unit, and they change for different things. But the rest of them you can see in the mounts for males and females. So these are other things, the elements that are essential to life. So these are the minerals. We went over the big ones, and we also need phosphorus. We need that in our DNA and other things like ATP, adenosine triphosphate, for instance. Sulfur is found quite a bit in our protein. Our hair has a bit more cysteine protein in it. That's why it smells so bad when you burn hair, because of the sulfur in it. And we have various other minerals, and we have trace elements, and we have really ultra trace elements in us as well. So there's more to food. We can add other things to our food. We can fortify our food. And here in the United States, we really fortify our food. We add B vitamins to it. We add calcium, all sorts of things. So it's very rare for people to get deficiency diseases in the United States. We also add food preservatives to our food. So for instance, salt and vinegar are common ones, but also other ones like sodium benzoate. These preserve our food so that it doesn't spoil. And there's other things, flavor enhancers, color. There's part of experience with food is color. When you eat certain candy like Skittles or Starburst, we like the pretty colors in them. Would we like Skittles and Starburst as much if they looked brown? I don't know. I like the fancy colors. I usually go for the red ones myself, actually. The Food and Drug Administration also regulates these. These are some flavor enhancers. So you can see here like grape flavoring, like the artificial flavoring here, or garlic flavoring. These types of things, cinnamaldehyde for oil, cinnamon. These add all sorts of flavors to our food. And sweeteners. So the idea of sweeteners are, so if you look at something like Sweet and Low or NutraSweet or these other things, so NutraSweet is equal. This the blue packet. Sweet and Low is aspartame. It's the pink packet. You can see how thin those are versus sugar. Sugar's got a kind of thick packet to it. If you ever buy coffee or tea and you want to sweeten it up, a little bit of sweetener makes things really sweet. And you can see those are the different types of sweetener. And you can see relative to sugar, sucrose, table sugar is given a sweetness of 1, and relative to those show the different sweetness of the additives. So here's some different types of molecules that are the food coloring. This colors our food. In carcinogens, there are some carcinogens in food. For grilled steak, has benzoprine in it, and nutmeg and cinnamon have a carcinogen in them, and aflatoxins. So it's interesting listening to people talk. People are afraid of preservatives. So having preservatives puts your body under stress because your body has to deal with these. At the same time, preservatives prevent food from spoiling, which can cause aflatoxins. And aflatoxins are molds that grow in things. So it's really, it's going to get you no matter what. If you have preservatives or if you don't have them, you're in danger. Well, the easiest way to mitigate these dangers from carcinogens in food is to have a diet that has fiber in it, so these flushes these carcinogens out of your gastrointestinal tract. Obesity, this is a disease that have higher than normal body mass index. And obesity is a condition when someone's health and life span are adversely affected by the amount of body mass that the person has. And this can be caused by overeating, and also thyroid disorders can cause obesity. Other things, bulimia nervosa, this is, or also commonly known as bulimia, this is designed by binging and purging. So eating food but then purging. How does people purge? By vomiting the food out is common, laxative, or exercising. So I'm going to eat a slice of cake and then run 20 miles. Those are all types of bulimia. Bulimia is diagnosed by an imbalance of electrolytes in the bloodstream. Anorexia nervosa, also known as anorexia, this is from extreme restriction of food intake. And so what causes these eating disorders? It's thought to be psychological in origin. The people that I know that have these disorders, they tell me that they can't control anything else in their life, but that they can control this. So it's thought to be due to psychological problems. Now we're going to not stop talking about food and talk about the human population. So how many people can the Earth support if we go to organic food? The answer, it's debatable, but it's most likely between 2 and 3 billion people in that range. The Earth cannot support the population we have right now. And the philosopher who came up with this was Thomas Malthus. He showed so population grows exponentially while food grows arithmetically. So, for instance, if you get 20 bushels of corn per acre, how do you get 40 bushels of corn? Well, you plant two acres of corn, and so every single acre you go step up by step. But if you look at population, so my mother, she is one of 8 children. I'm one of 5, and so if you look at this, my mother on my mom's side, I have 27 cousins, and my siblings, there are 8 nieces and nephews. I don't have any children yet, but you can see that if you compare it to my grandparents, I don't know how many great grandchildren they have, but they have 27 plus 5, so I have 32. They've spawned 32 children, so you can see that or grandchildren. That population can grow very, very quickly, and when a population outgrows the ability to feed itself, that's called a Malthusian catastrophe. That happened around the start of the 19th, or around the 20th century. That in 1910, 1920, there was just not enough food to go around, and this is compound interest. And also, the rule is 70. If you see this, if you take 70 divided by the rate, that'll tell you the doubling time. Like for instance, if you have a 2% interest rate of return, it'll take you 35 years to double your investment. So this here shows human population. You can see that it was flat for a long time, and then it still was flat, and then something around here is something recently caused a huge spike in the population. And there are 2 things that are responsible for that huge spike in the population. The first one is the inventing of antibiotics, because fewer people died from infectious diseases. And the second, more important one, is ammonia synthesis, which allowed nitrogen fertilizer. So the reason why our human population is so huge right now is because our industry supports our agriculture. And agriculture, earliest, though there was the different time periods in Earth's history, there was hunter-gatherers, and then people started to raise farm animals and slash and burn. Eventually, they built up permanent agriculture, and up until about the turn of the century, 2 centuries ago, there were no synthetic polymers, no pesticides. Now we have fertilizers, and that's the reason why we have the huge population. And so anyone who thinks that we should all go organic, we all go organic, we're going to lose at least half of the world, probably more so of the world's population. We're going to lose like on the order of 5 billion people will starve without synthetic fertilizers and pesticides. And that's assuming those 5 billion people don't eat the other 2 billion people's food. So soil is a mixture of organic and inorganic molecules, and the inorganic part is mostly silicates. We talk about that in chemistry of the Earth. And the size, the big particles are called sand, the medium ones are silt, and the smallest ones are clay. And these are all important because they deal with the water holding capacity of the soil. Now the soil, these 2 pictures you can see on the left, the diagram on the right, actual soil. You have things down to the bedrock. In the top layers, though, you can see that there's more of this black organic part of the soil. Organic is carbon containing, and that is also called humus, and sometimes called humic acid as well. This is mostly decomposed plants, and the top layer is the topsoil, then we have subsoils, and then bedrock. And in general, the soil pH tends to be slightly acidic. It depends on what's growing. In erosion, this is when the soil is removed. In plants' nutrients, plant nutrients, so sort of like how we need fats, sugars, and proteins in large amounts, plants need quite a bit of nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus. Plants need some other nutrients in moderate amounts and some in really small amounts. But nitrogen, this is the biggest one. This is really important. This was nitrogen fixation and the Haber-Bosch process. This would allowed the primary reason why we had a huge world population boom. But nitrogen, ammonia can also be used to make explosives, and Germany fought World War I. Germany is where Haber-Bosch process was developed. World War I could not have been fought without without the ammonia synthesis. So ammonia synthesis, although it's allowed the huge population of the Earth we have today, it also had found its use in warfare. And the Allies, at the time, the source of nitrates for fertilizers and explosives was Chile, and so the Allies blockaded Germany, and thinking this would be a fast and easy war. Unfortunately, Germany made their own fertilizer and explosives synthetically, so the blockade didn't work. And so nitrogen can be put in soil via salts. And ammonium nitrate, that is also a common explosive, and this is the Oklahoma City, the federal building there was damaged from a nitrogen fertilizer bomb. Nutrients, so potassium is also needed in large amounts, as is phosphorus. And if you've seen fertilizers, they have 3 numbers on them. The first number is the percent nitrogen, the second number is the percent diphosphorus pentoxide, and the last number is the amount of potash, or potassium oxide. We use quite a bit of synthetic fertilizers. A downfall with them is they cause erosion because they're very powdery and they take away the constitution of the soil. Organic fertilizers, these things do replenish the soil more naturally, but these tend to be more expensive and they can't be scaled up like the synthetics do. So here are the micronutrients. So farmers, that's a really rough job. They have to really understand what they're doing. And so if one of these nutrients is not found in the right amounts, then the plants can die. As if there's too much, the plants can also die. So farmers are good at diagnosing the issue with their plants and then giving them the right nutrients. And pesticides, so imagine, for instance, that we went with pure organic consumption. So we already have a problem now without synthetic fertilizers. The crops don't grow as much. So the crops we have right now, they're crops on steroids. We get a lot of yield per acre. So our yields go down without fertilizers. And then the next problem is, well, what do we do if a swarm of locusts goes through? If it eats all our corn, if it eats all the wheat in Canada and all the corn in the continental United States, a lot of people are going to die from that. So how do we prevent these plagues of biblical proportions happening? We use insecticides. A couple types. There's broad spectrum, they kill everything. A narrow spectrum pesticide will kill a specific type of pest. Problem though is that if we use too many pesticides, it can kill other beneficial bugs like bees. Also the pesticide treadmill. So for instance, let's say I have a problem with some insects and I put down some pesticides, but then I might kill the helpful insects like praying mantises. Like the praying mantises eat other bugs, and then the next year I find out that I have an even worse problem. So that's that. And then so what do? I add more pesticides. That's the pesticide treadmill. Herbicides, they can kill weeds, and this is an energy saver. Monsanto is famous for this, for the herbicide Roundup, because they found and engineered some plants to be immune to Roundup, so you can spray on it, kill the weeds and not the crops. And this saves the time. You can plow the weeds under as well, but the idea is just it's easier to spray than plow. There are other ways to control insects. One is using a pheromone. So female insects release pheromones when they want to have sex, and the males will pick up the pheromones, and if you place the pheromones, males will crawl into traps, and what they will find is that they're around a bunch of males and there are no females, but you've trapped them. and you've kept them from continuing their species. Also, juvenile hormones, these keep insects from reaching sexual maturity. So it's like giving them birth control pills, kind of, sort of. Biological control put predators, so like if you have a rat problem, get some cats. Or if you have a cockroach problem, get a bunch of geckos. So these types of things, these get the pests out of the way. Also sterilization, so I can, if I have a problem with cockroaches, I can take a bunch of cockroaches, sterilize them, and throw them back in the environment. And so those cockroaches, when they mate, they do not produce any offspring. So future farming, hybrid plants are very common now, as is genetic engineering. And what they do is they get certain traits into the plant, like certain pest resistance. So a lot of plants now have the certain types of pest resistance. They have a gut buster in them. It causes certain worms to not be able to survive. If the worms eat any of the food of the plants, they end up dying. Also, things like the ability to grow in salt water. These are some things that the research is going right now. And also, having integrated pest management to rely less on chemicals and more on alternative means. GMOs, genetically modified organisms, we can insert certain genes in the plants. So we've been doing this passively for thousands of years, and a lot of the plants that were originally like maize that we eventually, through our own selective breeding, turned into corn. But we've recently done this by taking apart the DNA of the plants. And some people are worried about the allergic reactions. I spoke to the vice president of Monsanto about this, and I brought this to his attention. I'm like, well, what about people if you put peanut genes into plants, or fish genes into plants? Are people that are allergic to fish and or nuts, will they get allergic reactions? He assures me that these are very well known, and these pathways, so they don't do anything to harm people. And the other, if that proof hasn't bothered you, says, besides, you know and I know, if anyone gets sick off of our stuff, they're going to sue us, and we're going to become bankrupt. So the sue happy ability of Americans is really helped this individual, or this type of problem. So it's not really that much of an issue. So what's the future of the food? What do we do if the world population keeps on growing? We actually are fairly wasteful from our food. I'm guilty of this. I go to the grocery store, I look for the most perfect food I can find. If I see an apple that has a smudge on it, or if I'm eating my banana and I drop it and it goes on the floor, I throw it away. I waste a lot of food. I don't brush it off and eat it. Yeah, so if we keep on growing, we're going to have to be less picky on the quality of our food. And we have a huge food surplus. How long it's going to last? I don't know. It just depends. It depends on how fast the world population grows, and it depends if our technology is able to keep up with it. If we can get more, if our industry and can keep up with it. This is one of those unknowns for the future.